Wednesday, January 24, Defender and Deliverer. Read 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 1 to 4. How does Paul describe the Exodus story? And what spiritual lesson does he seek to teach with it? 1 Corinthians chapter 10, beginning at verse 1. Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea, all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. Read Psalm 114. How is the divine deliverance of the people of Israel from Egypt poetically described here? Psalm 114, beginning at verse 1. When Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from a people of strange language, Judah became his sanctuary, and Israel his dominion. The sea saw it and fled, Jordan turned back, the mountains skipped like rams, the little hills like lambs. What ails you, O sea, that you fled? O Jordan, that you turned back? O mountains, that you skipped like rams? O little hills like lambs? Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool of water, the flint into a fountain of waters. What a poetic description of God's marvellous deliverance of his children from the bondage in Egypt is given in Psalm 114. All through the Old Testament and even in the New, the deliverance from Egypt was seen as a symbol of God's power to save his people. Paul, in these verses in 1 Corinthians, does just that, seeing the whole true story as a metaphor, a symbol of salvation in Jesus Christ. Psalm 114 also depicts divine deliverance through God's sovereignty as the creator over the powers of nature, which was how he saved his people in the Exodus. The sea, the river Jordan, and the mountains and hills poetically represent the natural and human powers opposing the Israelites on their way to the promised land. As you read in Deuteronomy 1, verse 44, and the Amorites who dwelt in that mountain came out against you and chased you as bees do, and drove you back from Seir to Hormah. And Joshua chapter 3, verses 14 to 17. So it was when the people set out from their camp to cross over the Jordan with the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant before the people, and as those who bore the Ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests who bore the Ark dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest, that the waters which came down from upstream stood still, and rose in a heap very far away at Adam, the city that is beside Zaratan. So the waters that went down into the sea of the Arabah, the salt sea, failed and were cut off, and the people crossed over opposite Jericho. Then the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of the Jordan, and all Israel crossed over on dry ground, until all the people had crossed completely over the Jordan. God, though, is sovereign over all of them. In fact, for many of God's children in all times and in all places, the way to the heavenly Jerusalem is fraught with danger. The Psalms encourage them to look beyond the hills and toward the Creator of heaven and earth, as we read in Psalm 121, verse 1. I will lift up my eyes to the hill from whence comes my help. The spirit of Psalm 114 is captured by Jesus' calming of the sea storm and his proclamation that the church has nothing to fear because he has overcome the world, as you read in Matthew 8, 23 to 27. Now when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But he was asleep. Then his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are perishing. But he said to them, Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him? And John 16:33, These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. The Lord's great deeds on behalf of his people should inspire the whole earth to tremble at his presence. We read in Psalm 114, verse 7, Tremble, O earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob. The trembling should be understood as acknowledging and worshipping, rather than as being terrified. We read this in Psalm 96, verse 9, O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness, tremble before him, all the earth. And in Psalm 99, verse 1, The Lord reigns, let the people tremble. He dwells between the cherubim. Let the earth be moved. With God on their side, believers have nothing to fear. And so to finish today, what are some of the spiritual dangers we face as believers? And how can we learn to lean on the Lord's power to protect us from succumbing to these dangers that are as real for us now as they were for the psalmist? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.